Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Committee Reads. I'm your host, KWCs, and with me today, I only have Nagoda, and today we will be covering match 119, Gorosaurus vs. Baragon, by Kenneth James. Gorosaurus lay sleeping in front of the Eiffel Tower. In truth, he had no anger in his mind and meant no harm. He'd just been looking for a new territory to stake claim to, seeing as he had no hope of toppling Kong's reign over their home island or Godzilla's over Monsterland. It was the most obvious thing to do, but Paris just wasn't for him. Too many humans. The annoying little things were bad enough with mere spears like back home, let alone with modern weapons. He was merely taking a snooze. Thanks to the various authorities on Kaiju, the people of Paris knew that fact as well. In fact, they were actually glad the huge dinosaur was present, as they had another problem that was harmful that they needed dealt with, and Gorosaurus was just the one for the job. Gorosaurus was awakened when his predatory senses detected the odor of blood. Rising his head over the buildings, he discovered a large pile of meat had been laid out near him, but stranger still was the fact humans were opening any entrance to the underground of Paris around it. Gorosaurus was confused, but humans did pretty much the same thing back on Monsterland to feed the residents and keep them happy, so he thought nothing else of it. Besides, why leave perfectly good food to go to waste? Gorosaurus rose to his feet and walked over to the buffet seemingly laid out before him, sniffing it with some degree of caution, finding it not tainted in any way he could detect. As he took some of his massive jaws to eat, his eyes found a strange sight awaiting him. The ground in front of him bursting open to reveal a smaller red kaiju, Baragon. He could tell by scent this wasn't the same Baragon he'd known back on Monsterland. This was another of his species, and by scent, he could tell this one was more aggressive. The subterranean kaiju quickly stuck his face in the meat Gorosaurus had already claimed as his own, inciting the kaiju's wrath. I think that's wrath. It's supposed to be wrath. And earning a tail whip to the side of the face. Baragon bellowed in rage at this attack, refusing to give up a feast such as this to the larger kaiju, and a tenacious one in his own right. Baragon scratched Gorosaurus' jaw, drawing a light trickle of blood and a fierce roar from the saurian monster. The military watched approvingly. This was what they hoped. Gosh darn it. What they hoped would happen. Gorosaurus was no threat, but the Baragon that had taken residents up under Paris had been making a meal of the locals, and his burrowing was a major source of property damage, not to mention threatening the catacombs of Paris. But the military had been able to smoke Baragon out or kill him when they got him into the open. That wasn't until Gorosaurus decided to make a pit stop. Having already evacuated the area of the city and a little battle-based property damage preferable to Baragon's continued feeding on the local population and undermining the city's foundations, Gorosaurus' arrival was just as what the doctor ordered. Dang, that was a kind of a weird sentence. I couldn't read that one right.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't escape them that it was rather ironic that they were using the same creature they had once mistaken for Baragon to fight him now. Hey, reference. Gorosaurus struck first, swinging his tail around, only for Baragon to duck under and counterattack by leaping through the air and slamming his horn to Gorosaurus' chest, driving him backwards and drawing blood. Baragon followed up with another leap, this time landing with his jaws clamped on Gorosaurus' shoulder, drawing a roar of pain from the dinosaur's mouth. As Baragon shook his head like a dog, trying to tear out a chunk of flesh, Gorosaurus bit down on Baragon's shoulder himself, picking the smaller monster off and throwing him through a row of houses. Now angry, Gorosaurus charged and swung around as Baragon stood up, smacking the smaller kaiju in the side with his tail, knocking him to the ground flat on his back. Gorosaurus quickly lunged down and sunk his teeth into Baragon's shoulder, drawing blood quickly. Pass.
Okay. Baragon roared out in pain as the razor-edged teeth of his adversary tore into his shoulder and lit up his horn right beside Gorosaurus's eye, causing the prehistoric predator to rear back in pain, releasing Baragon. Gorosaurus struggled to see out of his temporarily blinded eye, allowing Baragon to get back to his feet and let loose a torrent of flames from his maul into Gorosaurus's face, sending him recoiling and roaring in pain, his face receiving second-degree burns from the flames. Before Gorosaurus could recover, Baragon did a running leap, jumping clear over Gorosaurus, and, upon landing, sunk his teeth into Gorosaurus's tail, inciting a roar of pain from the dinosaur kaiju. Gorosaurus flailed his tail wildly, trying to throw Baragon off, but the tenacious kaiju hung tight, even as himself was tore from the ground and swung through the air, slamming back down onto a small building. Wrong use of himself words.
Yeah.
Gorosaurus Gorosaurus spun around, trying to snap at the persistent little kaiju, only to be evaded every time. Starting to get frustrated at this annoying pest for making a fool of him, Gorosaurus reared back on his tail, using his ability to support his body weight by his tail to press Baragon's bottom jaw hard against the floor. The ground, I mean. Same thing. Baragon flailed in surprise and pain as his lower jaw was sandwiched between Gorosaurus's entire body weight and the ground. Desperate to free himself, Baragon let loose his flames, causing Gorosaurus to jump back to his feet, trying to make the burning pain in his tail stop while the subterranean kaiju received a burn to the face from the backwash of fire caused by blasting something in his mouth. However, Baragon managed to recover quickly enough to leap into the air, slamming down hard on Gorosaurus's back, driving the dinosaur to the ground hard before raining claw slashes into his back, drawing blood and causing quite a few lacerations. Gorosaurus let out a bellow of pain and fury at this attack, managing to get to his feet, but Baragon, once more showing his tenacity, clung on tight, biting into the back of his shoulder. Gorosaurus once more found himself struggling to get free from Baragon's powerful jaws, though he was more annoyed by this than anything else. Gorosaurus finally decided to rear back on his tail again, this time letting the extra weight of Baragon send both crashing backwards through a small building, crushing Baragon under his weight. Baragon yelped loudly upon impact, allowing Gorosaurus to free himself and get to his feet. Gorosaurus spun around to find Baragon's tail disappearing beneath the earth. Gorosaurus scanned his surroundings carefully, trying to find out where his rival had gone. Finally, deciding the smaller creature had fled, he turned back towards the meat to eat his hard-earned meal, only for his foot to fall into a hole dug by Baragon, sending him toppling to his side with a roar of surprise. Gorosaurus groaned as he struggled to stand, only for Baragon to poke out of the ground next to him and breathe a torrent of fire into his chest, causing him to roar in pain and leaving a blackened patch of skin in its place. Gorosaurus quickly snapped in retaliation, only for the subterranean kaiju to pop back into his hole and dodge him. Growling, Gorosaurus quickly made it to his feet and glared at the hole, knowing now the subterranean kaiju hadn't fled. He'd merely changed how he was fighting the battle. Gorosaurus held his ground, looking around for any sign of Baragon, but ultimately, that sign came from behind in the form of a blast of fire, staggering him forward and getting a cry of surprise and pain from the kaiju. Gorosaurus spun around, only to once again find Baragon gone, and moments later, receiving a blast of fire to the back. This same exchange repeated twice more, causing Gorosaurus' fury and frustration to grow, feeling like a dog stuck at the end of his leash with a cat taunting him a few inches out of his grasp. Gorosaurus then had an idea.
What a weird analogy. Alright.
Yeah. Baragon popped out of the ground once more to fire, only to find Gorosaurus gone. The subterranean kaiju looked around in confusion, wondering where his rival had disappeared to so quickly. The answer came when Gorosaurus erupted from behind Baragon, his tail clenched in his jaws. Baragon roared in surprise and pain as Gorosaurus's jaw crushed down on his tail, drawing blood. Gorosaurus shook his head, lacerating Baragon's flesh, taking pleasure in the realization this Baragon didn't know Gorosaurus could burrow as well. One of the reasons he'd been mistaken for the burrowing monster last time he was here. Gorosaurus flung Baragon through the air, sending him crashing into a clearing nearby. Enraged, Baragon charged once again and leapt through the air at Gorosaurus. But that was a well Baragon had gone to once too often. Gorosaurus was ready and reared back on his tail. Baragon barely had time to give a roar of shock before Gorosaurus let loose a kangaroo kick, striking him right in the chest and sending him soaring through the air for several hundred yards and into the Arc de Triomphe, crushing the structure under his now limp body. Gorosaurus cautiously made his way over to Baragon, checking the subterranean creature over, finding Baragon coughing up blood and in agony, his chest having practically been imploded by the kick. Taking pity on the little kaiju, and deciding to put him out of his misery, Gorosaurus lunged forward and clamped his jaws around Baragon's throat, shaking it until he tore Baragon's throat out. Blood pouring from his neck, Baragon quickly went limp in death. Swallowing the hunk of Baragon's flesh, Gorosaurus licked his lips, now having 2 big meals to eat, unknowing that the French military had used them for pest control. He honestly didn't care, so long as they left him be. Gorosaurus quickly set to work, eating Baragon's corpse, enjoying a well-earned meal. Winner, Gorosaurus.
I was about to say winner, Baragon.
Oh.
Because they mistook him for Gorosaurus. They mistook him for Baragon at the last minute. I'll say, this, I like the fighting segment of the match, but there were some sentences that just seemed a little awkward. So I don't like it. This kind of hampered down just a bit, but I did kind of like the bait. It is a little weird. I get that this is the Monsterland Gorosaurus. How he got so far now is beyond me, but I get that it's okay, he
used the same tunnel.
I guess so. Freaking yeah, I think yeah, it's still a little weird that Gorosaurus is kind of put more in a hero light as opposed to oh, he's also eating people. But I guess that makes it a little different, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say it's I can't say it's a bad thing to spice things up. That just seems a little weird to me. That I feel like he would also try to be eating people, but at the same time, but the people don't offer that much, so whatever. And then that versus a wild Baragon, it's okay, gotcha. But
rather take the other guy that won't eat us than the guy who's been eating us.
Yep, pretty much. So, other than that though, there are some there are some I think probably the strongest point. Granted, how Gorosaurus burrows will always be a mystery, but I was definitely because they couldn't get Baragon to do it right. So
he eats the dirt. He's like a larvitar. He eats through the dirt.
Yeah. That's kind of my headcanon, that he basically eats dirt. Uses his teeth to burrow his way through. That's always been my headcanon. But for that aside, it's I do like the fact that Gorosaurus also employs the burrowing tactic to fool Baragon. I think that's a decent highlight from this match. That and the obvious reference that this is based on, which is made clear. So yeah, decent match. Maybe a couple little strange sentences here and there that just felt odd. They could have been better proofread or better said. So, and a couple of little misspellings here and there. Other than that, though,
some of the things went on for a while.
Yeah, could have been trimmed a bit too, if you ask me. But it's a decent match. So, so what do you think of it, man?
It was okay. I liked all the references, like how they once thought Gorosaurus was Baragon is a reference to Destroy All Monsters. And another thing I liked to point out was they treated Baragon like Zilla.
Oh, shoot. I mean,
They opened up all the underground openings, made a pile of food for him, and waited for him to come out.
oh my gosh, yeah, you're totally right. Oh my gosh. It's from the French, because Zilla was created as French Polynesian. So Gorosaurus versus Baragon, also known as Gorosaurus versus Zilla, round 2. Just mostly kidding though, but
Well, now we gotta add another monster to that continuation sequel.
I guess so. But yeah, shoot. Yeah. Decent match. Like, has some highlights, but I feel like it's, once again, not one of it. It's a decent one. Perfectly fine for what it is. So, just a couple mistakes here and there that kind of hold it back from me.
Yep. Also, banner's okay.
Yeah, I like the banner for this one. Once again, simplicity, never a bad thing. I do like the way that the monsters are layered, especially with Gorosaurus next to the Eiffel Tower. That looks really nice. So, yeah.
I like how they're actually facing each other in this one. Some of them, they don't have them facing each other.
Well, that can't be helped sometimes, but yeah, having that extra effort of having them face each other is really nice too. So, good stuff. With that said, this has been match 119, and we will see you guys next time for match 120. Till then, folks.
Bye.